This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Now I'm here at one of my favorite spots to shoot at in San Diego. I'm here at Wind and Sea in La Jolla, California. And this morning we have a beautiful high tide. As you can see behind me, the water is splashing all the way up against the rocks. We're also next to the hut right over here. So if you guys are familiar with San Diego, pretty iconic hut that's right on the shoreline of Wind and Sea. And if you guys are familiar with my channel, you guys know I like to do a lot of long exposure photography, and whenever you get water that's crashing up against the rocks, it definitely creates such a unique type of look. Now here I am today with the DJI Mini 3, and I did purchase this filter, the Freewell gear filter. This is an ND1000. Now one of the most common uses for ND filters is to adjust your shutter speed when shooting video. But for me, I like to get really dark ND filters like this one, because when you get dark ND filters and you're shooting on a sunny day, it allows you to get long exposure photography, and that's something I really like doing. So in this video, I just want to walk you through my process of shooting long exposure photography here at Wind and Sea. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Squarespace. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Squarespace, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for you to create your business, your personal brand, all online. Now, even though we have a lot of social media options out there, there's nothing better than having your own personal branded website for you to promote your business and product. The one thing that drew me to Squarespace when I first started FlytPath was how well designed their templates were. As my brand grew, I was able to use a lot of Squarespace's e-commerce options when I started selling my flight case bags on my website. Another thing that's great about Squarespace is that you're also able to capture an email list. So if you're a company or just a personal brand like myself, you want to have that online presence for you to post not only your portfolio or possibly some e-commerce and products down the road, you're going to want an all-in-one platform like Squarespace. And huge thanks to Squarespace for offering my viewers a free trial as well as a 10% off your first purchase. Now, having shot long exposure photos as far as things like this with the rocks and the waves, I try to dial in my shutter speed to be about a half second, maybe 3/4 of a second, all the way up to a second long. Now, the reason why you need something like an ND1000, ND2000 filter is that if you don't have one, the shutter speed will be cranked all the way up in order for the camera to properly expose the image. All right, so right now I do have the ND1000 on there, and as you can see from my settings down below, you're gonna want to switch over into manual mode. You wanna take full control of your drone and the camera settings. So because I'm gonna be shooting photos, let's move this over into photo mode. And now at the very bottom, you'll see it says auto and pro. I want to switch that over into pro mode because I want to take manual control over the camera settings. Now, the one thing with the Mini 3 compared to something like the Mavic 3 is that you do not have an adjustable aperture on the Mini 3. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, we don't have the ability to make those micro adjustments like you can with the Mavic 3. You're able to change that aperture from anything from an f2.8 all the way down, close it all the way down to an f11, f13, 16. With the Mini 3, you are stuck at the f1.7, which means you only have a couple other options to change exposure. You either can change your ISO as well as changing your shutter speed. So being that we are a fixed 1.7, we can't change that. Ideally, what we want to do is get to a shutter speed around half a second. We'll start there. And we want to keep that ISO as low as possible, because the lower your ISO is, the less grain or noise you'll get in your image. When it comes to exposing your image, those are the three things you're really going to need to know. With that said, let's point my camera out, which we are doing right now. And as you can see here at the very bottom, we are at an f1.7. Like I said, we can't change that, so it's actually not even a setting here because there is no aperture setting. It is fixed. Now, if I go into my shutter speed, as you can see, if I go at 1 second, that means the shutter is going to open up for 1 second and close. And if you look at my histogram right here on the left-hand side, you can see it's overexposed. If I click on that water right there, at 1 second, it is overexposed. That bar graph is all the way to the right and spiked to the right. That means you're well overexposed. You want those kind of bumps and those hills to be high in the middle. So with that said, 1 second is going to be too long, and I am at the lowest ISO 100, which means that it will produce me the highest quality with minimal noise or grain. Now, 1 second looks to be a little long. This is the reason why you might want something like an ND2000. Right now, let's see what our capabilities are with this ND1000. If I lower this shutter speed down to about a half a second, as you can see there, it is a little bit better. You can see that the histogram is moving to the left, and that's where we want. We want those things to be more towards the middle. So it looks like with that ND1000, we're able to get about a half a second long photo, which should give us some nice movement in that water. So basically the shutter is going to open up for half a second, half a second every time you hit that trigger. Now that we are all set up here, let's take the drone up in the air. Okay, so found one of the rocks right over here, and what we'll do is just do a sample shot. You want to make sure you're also clicking on that subject just to ensure that you are in focus. So let's take a sample shot here, see what 1/1.2 second exposure would look like. Press that. There you go, check that out. Look at that movement in that water. I could probably bring this down just a bit. So let's bring this down. I'd rather be a little bit underexposed. You don't want to overexpose it. You don't want to blow out the whites. Once you blow out the whites, they're pretty much lost. So you do not want to overexpose your image. A little bit easier to recover from the darks. Of course, you cannot recover those blown out whites. Oh, that's super cool. Check that out. All right, so that looks good. So what we want to do now is work our way over to the hut, and that's the place that I ideally want to get to. So we are at a nice high tide this morning, and let's look at all that. Look at all that movement. This is going to be really cool. All right, so let's move this forward a little bit more. Let's get more of the water in there. Make sure we are in focus. Look at my histogram. My histogram is right there in the middle, and here comes the waves. Take a snap right there. Oh, that's awesome. Check that out. And the great thing about once you're dialed in, once you find the good, as far as shutter speed goes, then you can really just move the drone around and take a bunch of shots at different locations and get so many different types of unique photos and angles, because every wave is going to be different, every way it hits is going to be different, and you're really just able to just keep shooting and keep flying and get so many different types of looks from one location. Now, the one thing a lot of people will ask me, how do you keep the drone, or how's your image not super blurry, with long exposure, having that shutter speed open for a second, half second, without getting the image not too blurry? The thing is, when you're further away from a subject, you get away with a little bit more movement. If you're really close to a subject, any small jitter, every small movement you can really see. But when you're higher and higher up from the subject, you can get away with a little bit more sway, a little bit more movement in that camera. And you can see the hut right there. Oh, this is really cool. Let me get one vertical with all that water, that long exposure right there. Boom. You just want to be cognizant of looking at your histogram to make sure that you're not too overexposed on certain areas. Like I said, you can't recover those overblown or overexposed areas like you can if it was underexposed. So you always want to make sure you're just a little bit underexposed. And there it is, guys. Just wanted to show you some examples and my process of how I go about shooting long exposure photography. I think the one thing to note from this, as far as some takeaways go, in order for you to achieve this on a bright day like this, you're just going to need darker ND filters. You can still use lower ND filters, like an ND 512 or 256. However, if the sun's out like that, you're going to need darker ones. If you want to use the 256 or a 512, then you have to do it early morning, or it has to be really, really cloudy of a day. So if you guys are looking at doing long exposure photography, definitely look at something like an ND 1000 plus an ND 2000. And I'll put all those links down below of this one that I bought, as well as some of the other ones that are available on the market. Huge thanks again to our sponsor of this video, Squarespace. If you guys are looking at creating your online presence and online brand, you're definitely gonna want to have your own website. And if you guys use my links down below, you'll not only get a free trial, you'll also get a discount off of your first purchase. If you guys got some value from this video, a big like would be much appreciated. This is Aldrin Stasio with FlytPath.com. We'll see you guys next one. Take care.